doors, chests, and so on, preventing them from being opened without the proper key. Unquote. Excerpt from the 1832 edition of the Edinburgh Encyclopedia. The simple and common lock consists of a strong bolt which is generally fitted into a case of metal so as to admit of a motions backwards and forwards. Many ingenious mechanics have turned their attention to the subject of lock making. In fact, the object of securing property from the depredations of others is so important that few instruments have had more pains and ingenuity bestowed upon them than locks. The subject of locks is so extensive that it would far exceed my limits to give a description of all the different forms and arrangements that have been proposed by various persons. The pin tumbler is the most commonly found lock in the United States. It is the meat and potatoes of lock technology. You may be surprised to know it is also one of the oldest lock technologies. Existing since biblical times, a form of the pin tumbler lock with long wooden keys was even found in ancient Egyptian pyramids. In fact, these devices are even older than before. It would take until the mid-1800s for Linus Yale, founder of the Yale Lock Company, to implement a modern pin tumbler with 2 pins in each pin stack. His son continued his work and created a viable mass manufacturing commercial product by 1865. Today, there is a vast selection of pin tumbler from which to choose. They vary in quality, size, number of possible combinations, and cost, and are essential to providing a sense of security for our society. Pin tumblers can be found in many places, most commonly on house deadbolts, doorknobs, cabinets, padlocks, and so on. They usually have pins visible in the keyway. Pins are often found and somewhat pointed at the end. The pins are often spring-loaded and will spring back down when you push up on them. Although many pin tumbler locks have 5 pin columns, the number may vary depending on the quality of the lock. First, let's become familiar with the components inside the lock. The keyway is the opening into which the key is inserted. The sideboards in the pin tumbler design are lengthwise protrusions along the sides of the keyway. These wards fit into the grooves along the sides of the key and are also kept to keep the springs from pushing the pins all the way out. The inner cylinder, which rotates as you turn the key, is called the plug. The hole or casing of the lock is the outer cylinder. The hole remains fixed in place and does not move. Each set of pins has a spring which pushes the pins down. Each pin column in the lock actually has 2 pins. One rests on top. Only one is really visible to your eyes unless you take the lock apart. The top pin is dubbed the driver pin because it drives or pushes the lower pins down. All of the driver pins are typical of the same size. The bottom pin of each set is called the key pin, since it is the pin that actually makes contact with the key. When the key pin will often rest on the ward. Key pins vary in length and match up with the notches in the key. Before any key is inserted into the lock, springs will push the top pins down. These top pins will extend past the hole and into the plug. As these pins protrude into the holes of the plug, they will hold the plug in place and prevent it from rotating. As long as there is a pin that crosses the dividing line between the hole and the plug, the cylinder will be locked. When the correct key is inserted into the lock, the blade of the key is raised to the pins. The bottom pins will rest on the notches of the key. Notice how the size of the notches complements the size of the bottom pins. Exactly. The longer the bottom pins, the deeper the cut into the key. When the key notch is at the correct height, the separation between the top pin and the bottom pin will be at the same height as the separation between the hole and the plug. This line of separation is called the shear line. When this occurs, a At every pin column, there are no longer any pins obstructing the shear line that prevent the plug from moving. The key can now turn and unlock the lock. And you have your basic lockpick tools, and this is a cutout that I drew of the lock. And there are a few types. There are torque wrenches, which are needed in the lockpicking process, and there are rakes and various other ones, like the steep diamond, the shallow diamond, the full diamond, the half ball, the double half ball, the ball, and the double ball. The curve ball pick and key extractors, which are used to extract broken keys. Rakes for raking the lockpicks, and which essentially put the lockpicks in their place, the pins in their place, on a small lip that occurs at the shear line when you apply pressure with the torque wrenches around that area, and then you stick the rake in there and you do up and down motion, and the pins will usually go up. And if there's a pin in the back, like over here, that doesn't go up, then you use hook picks, which have a hook shape, and there's a longer hook pin and a shorter hook pin, depending on what lock you're picking. And there are pins that are used in high security locks. There are mushroom pins or spool pins, and they tell what they're shaped like, I guess. And mushroom pins are shaped like a mushroom, and when you try to push up on the pin that has the high security mushroom pin, it will usually slide to the left and obstruct the path, leading to no further lock picking. And I have basic lock picking tools right here. And my own lock cutout that I made using a Dremel tool, and very simple. Tumblers fell out while I was cutting. Any questions? Yes.
Since there's so many pins, do various picks go in at one time in order to get all the pins out? Or how does that work?
No, the pins would, as I said, they would catch on the lip of the shear line. When you apply pressure to the torque wrench, it would make a small lip, and they would just rest there. Yes.
How are your lock picking skills?
Not very good. It's quite difficult.
Anybody buy something like that?
Yes, in the United States they can, but in a few countries they're illegal, like Great Britain. Yes.
Matthew, do you lift one pin at a time and then it'll stay up? Is that how you pick it?
With a rake, you don't really need to do that because you just stick it in there and jiggle it a little bit. But if you use this, you might have to use that method, and you might have to do it 2 times because it won't catch on the lips. But any other questions? Yes.
What did you find the most interesting?
I didn't know high security locks could be that simple, and that was pretty interesting. Yes.
Well, it seems like you described as rakes. You just gotta, jam them in there and pins go up. Kind of seems you describe it being pretty simple. How come other keys don't do that then? If you put a different key in,
Well,
why don't they also just push them?
because the key would they're all the lower pins. They'd be different they'd be different sizes and shapes, and the key pushes them right to the shear line, so that you wouldn't have to jiggle around. And also there's a ward that hooks in with the key notches on the side, and so you can't really move the key. Yes.
Is